Good afternoon or good morning or good evening to everyone. Thank you for your interest in this webinar. Nice to see many friends and new people. I think that more participants will arrive along the webinar, but I think it's important to start now to be on time. So I will share my screen with you so we can, I can share with you some first information about this webinar, our group, and then we will enter in the topic directly. So again, thank you for being with us. Few information about our webinar. This webinar is recorded. So keep on your camera if you want or not, as you prefer. But please keep your microphone off, please. And put your questions in the chat. For the speakers, please consider that English is not a native language for many participants, so take it into account. The presentation will be sent to the participant after the webinar. And we will send after the webinar also a survey to ask you your opinion about this event, because we need some feedback from you to improve for the future. Very few information about the Transboundary Conservation Specialist Group. You know that IUCN is a big institution that has 7 commissions, working commissions. Pardon. One of them is a World Commission for Protected Areas. And this commission has different working groups, specialist groups, task forces, etc. And among them, there is our Transboundary Conservation Specialist Group. Our aim is to promote the transboundary conservation for the conservation of nature, for ecosystem services, but we also are very aware about the cultural value, peace, and cooperation among people and among nations. And what we want to do in our group is share our knowledge, our capacity, and increase our capacity to dialogue and to know each other. You have here several websites where you can have more information about our work. And just another piece of information is the group. I am the co-chair of the group, Stefania Petrosillo, together with Pete Theron. Then we have 2 great senior advisors that are Kevan and Maya, and Kevan will be the facilitator of this webinar. Valentina is our very crucial, important assistant. And then we have regional coordinators that are very active in their region. And we are looking for new regional coordination to complete our executive committee. So if you are interested, please send us an email saying that you are willing to work with us. Finally, about today, after this short welcome from my side, Kevan will present the topic. And then we will have 3 different experiences and case studies that are from Africa, from Middle East, and from Europe, that I think will cover many, many different aspects of this thematic. And then we will have a space for questions, answers, and debate. So you will be able also to share your experiences in this topic. And then very quick conclusions from Kevan and myself. Just last word to say that for me, for the group, working for nature means working for peace. And that means also that working for nature means being able to listen each other. And we know how sometimes it's difficult to speak and to listen each other. So these sort of webinars and events and moments to work together are part of this important exercise that we need to do all together. Thank you very much. And please, Kevan, the floor is yours. And thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Steve. Yeah, and thanks for that reminder that we're here to listen to each other. Thank you also for the opportunity of moderating this webinar this afternoon. Yeah, it's a topic that's very, very close to my heart, and something that I've been engaging with since the very beginning of my career. And I want to just give a little bit of a rundown as to what that has been over the years as an intro to the topic that we're exploring this afternoon. I became very acutely aware of the importance of catchment management in the beginning of my career as a conservation planner with the Department of Water Affairs and Forestry here in South Africa, where it became very evident that the transformation of our indigenous grasslands to timber plantations was having a massive impact on both the volume of water in our watercourses as well as the quality of that water. When I went on to work for formal conservation as a conservationist, I was rather intrigued by the fact that the Department of Water Affairs at that time would proclaim a buffer around each of their dams to apparently protect that water resource. But little to nothing was being done in the catchment of those dams. So they would proclaim this area as a conservation, as a nature reserve, this small margin of land around the dam. But to me, that showed that there was a disconnect between the water resource planners, their understanding of managing the water resource, and what was needed to secure the integrity of that water resource in terms of managing its catchment. And that became also more apparent to me when I was engaged to help establish the Maluti-Drakensberg Transfrontier Conservation Area between South Africa and Lesotho. And the Maluti-Drakensberg Mountains, as we will hear later on in Eddie's presentation, are considered to be a water tower here in Southern Africa. And when that project kicked off, the focus of the project was biodiversity conservation and socioeconomic development, tourism. And during my tenure with the project, I introduced the concept of water catchment management, particularly with the view to possibly initiating payment for ecosystem services as a means to sustain the project. Fortunately, the World Bank at the time, who were the funding agent for the project, recognized the value of that, and we embarked on work to investigate that possibility. Today, unfortunately, nothing much has happened, particularly within Lesotho, in terms of realizing those payment for ecosystem service opportunities. But on the South African side, it's nice to know that there's been, at a national level, an understanding for the value of what has come to be seen or recognized as ecological infrastructure. And that also then highlights that disconnect between the water resource planners who look at the engineered infrastructure, the hard infrastructure, and us as conservationists to understand the value of the green infrastructure, the ecological infrastructure. And again, there, from a water resource planner's perspective, there seems to be a focus on the watercourse and what happens in the watercourse, the hydrology and the hydraulics of the system, and how much water can be stored behind a cement wall, etc. With sort of very little understanding that there's a very small fraction of precipitation that actually falls in the watercourse, and that the majority of our precipitation events fall on the terrestrial component of a water catchment, and that it's the condition of that terrestrial component that determines the quality and the volume of the water that actually eventually ends up in that watercourse. And so, you know, with that understanding and the need to create that linkage between the water resource planners and conservationists who are involved in trying to secure the integrity of that terrestrial component, it's really nice to be able to engage in this topic, because that understanding is applicable at a fine scale, but it's also applicable at a much larger scale, with many of our water basins being shared by multiple countries, and transboundary conservation being a discipline that seeks to forge collaborative agreements between countries to manage shared ecosystems. So it really does make a huge amount of sense for multinational water basin management entities to come alongside transboundary conservation initiatives, so that we can actually realize the value of securing the integrity of our water catchments, looking at that terrestrial component and the extent to which it adds value to the water that actually ends up in the watercourse and into the dams and into the reticulation systems. So the value of the green infrastructure and its contribution to the built infrastructure, it's a no-brainer. And I'm sure that as our speakers present this afternoon, that reality will become more and more apparent. So Steph, thank you for the opportunity of just reflecting back, you know, on my career and how that relationship has evolved in my understanding and to where we are today. So folks, we've got 3 speakers from different parts of the world. One from very close to where I am at the moment, Dr. Eddie Riddel, who's going to be speaking on his experiences with the Limpopo River Basin and TFCAs within the Limpopo River Basin. I'll provide more input into Eddie's background in a moment, but then also we have from the Middle East, we have Nadav, who works with EcoPeace Middle East, who's going to be speaking about the experiences that they have had over the last 30 years plus with EcoPeace Middle East and their work on the Jordan River. And then a new initiative that Henk Zingstra is going to be speaking to in regards to the experiences, or at least the concept that they have of restoring a river system between the Ukraine and Slovakia, the Latorica River. So Eddie, if you would please get yourself ready to present. Dr. Eddie Riddel is the regional coordinator for the UNDP GEF International Waters Program within the Limpopo Watercourse Commission and the Global Water Partnership Southern Africa. Eddie served as the freshwater ecosystem manager for the Kruger National Park in South Africa for a number of years. And Eddie's research and technical approaches aim to achieve resilient river basin management and adaptive ecosystem outcomes. Through this, his work has a transboundary focus in Southern Africa, harmonizing the mutual interests of river basin organizations and transfrontier conservation areas. Eddie is also an honorary research associate at the Center for Water Resources Research at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, which is incidentally the province where I reside in South Africa. And he is a registered water resources professional with the South African Council for Natural Resource Practitioners. Eddie, if you're ready to speak, please, you can take the floor.
Yes, thanks so much, Kevin, and also Stefania. I just want to check you can hear me and see the screen.
Yes, Eddie,
Great.
you're loud and clear.
Wonderful.
And presentation's up.
Thanks so much, and thanks for the opportunity, and also for setting the scene in terms of process, Kevin, linked to ecological infrastructure and hydrology. So just to advance the slides here. So yeah, just to set the scene, to zoom into the Southern Africa region, there's two maps here, basically depict the transboundary river basins, this area in blue. So this, for example, is the Limpopo River Basin where I work, together with the transboundary conservation areas. So in my case, it's the Great Limpopo, but we also have Kaza and various others in SADC, and also the transboundary aquifers, these areas in blue, light blue. So there's a very nice overlay between the transboundary conservation areas and the transboundary water resource management institutions. Now, that's quite important in the Southern Africa context, because I think we all agree we're going through a period of climate change, and I think it's affecting all of us. But in the Southern African region, this probably stands out somewhat in the sense that the Southern African region is probably going to warm at twice the rate of the global average. So that really sets quite a precedent in terms of how we deal with both the natural resources in these transboundary regions, as well as the water resources availability for both ecosystems and society to utilize. And I think we're starting to see that in Southern Africa, we're actually starting to reach those planetary tipping points already in terms of cyclonic activity and drought and so forth. So changes here. So moving on to the policy context. So within our region, we are the Southern African Development Community. And in the past, at a regional level, they have these things called strategic action plans, one for water, one for natural resources or transboundary conservation areas, and various others as well. But in the past, they didn't really speak to each other. But the most recent updates for the water one and the TFCA one, or the Transboundary Conservation Area one, have seen some point of convergence in terms of starting to speak to each other, the identification that we need to work together in specialist groups. So this, for example, comes from the recent Trans-Frontier Conservation Area strategy. It already highlights quite distinctly key working areas that they have to work towards: freshwater management, ecosystem baselines, community livelihoods around the TFCAs, disaster risk reduction, and so forth, and then harmonizing that approach with the river basin organizations or the water management institutions. Similarly, in the water policy, the Regional Strategic Action Plan on Water, again, a focus on working with the TFCAs as a distinct mention of those in one of their chapters. But probably also more significantly is the realization that from the water perspective, they need to bring in the nature-based solution approaches to resolve ecosystem approaches, socioeconomic resilience, and adaptation towards climate change, exactly linked to the ecological infrastructure that Kevin spoke about. Coincidentally, the SADC TFCA network commissioned a review about 2 years ago, funded by GIZ, and Kevin was actually involved in that study. And they looked at the whole range of ecosystem services from the transboundary conservation area perspective, which you can see here on the left-hand side, and then focusing on the water-based ecosystem services, or these, whether the transboundary conservation areas serve as water towers, or in South Africa, we call them strategic water source areas. And it went through an evaluation for each one of those, of the major TFCAs in the region. So, for example, the Maluti-Drakensberg, which is the key water tower for South Africa's economic heartland in Gauteng. And then also the Kaza, which supplies water to the Zambezi, the hydropower and irrigation needs of the river basin, and so forth. And then in my region, the Great Limpopo TFCA, which is not a water tower per se, but probably plays quite a significant role in terms of groundwater aquifer recharge, water quality assimilation, sediment retention, and so forth. This is a map zooming into the area that I work. So the Limpopo Water Course Commission, or the river basin, is shared between Botswana, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique. And coincidentally, the Great Limpopo TFCA actually is shared across neighboring transboundary basins, the Bapusa Basin and the Inca Maputo. And then we also have a smaller TFCA called the Greater Mapungubwe TFCA at the juncture between the Limpopo River and the Shashi River. So here, I'm just going to go through a few examples of historically where there's been cooperation that's advantageous for both the river basin organizations and the transboundary conservation areas. Too little time to go into any detail, but this was an issue that I was involved in when I worked within the protected areas in Kruger Park about 8 years ago. The region went through a very severe El Nino-induced drought, the same time that we had the Cape Town approaching day zero. And basically one of the main rivers the perennial river, the Limpopo River Basin, was actually about to stop flowing in the middle of the rainy season, which coincides with midsummer, getting exceedingly low flows. In the past, it had actually stopped flowing for about 3 months. So it was a significant governance failure that we worked to prevent. This time around, we were able to put in a cooperative action through an adaptive management process. We set up a catchment management committee, and we're able to reallocate water from one dam to the other, and therefore provide environmental flow releases. And that kept the Olifants River flowing during what was actually the most significant drought on record. Again, there's not enough time to go into the detail, but you're welcome to refer to these reports or contact me after, and I can send you some publications of relevance. Some of the other issues we've experienced in the climate change context is increased freshwater temperatures in the river systems. This is actually looking downstream from South Africa in the Kruger National Park, or the Makulek area, downstream towards Zimbabwe on the left-hand side and Mozambique on the right. And in this particular river system, up on the Lavuvu River, which flows directly into the Limpopo, again, environmental flows were being provided for the protected area. But as soon as those cross the border downstream, they actually become social environmental flows. And this picture is actually taken on a 44-degree day, exceedingly hot, and people were utilizing those available resources. But you can see, for example, some of the impacts of that on the aquatic ecosystem. There was fish mortalities in the river system because of the change in drops in dissolved oxygen and excessive temperatures in the river system. Some other impacts we've seen as a result of climate change in the TFCA space is linked to eutrophication, which itself is not a direct impact from climate change, but does manifest or is exacerbated when climate change impacts happen. So we've seen an excessive nutrient input into a number of the river systems. This is the Olifants River again. Impacts on the aquatic ecosystem, well-documented case of the panseatitis bioaccumulation disease in the Nile crocodile population in the river system. And coincidentally, after the back of the drought, we then had some significant cyclonic events, and that basically raised the water in the downstream dam, downstream in Mozambique, and led to a hypereutrophic event. It was actually off the charts in terms of its free available nutrients. But again, the early warning from the protected areas was able to work with the water management authorities downstream in Mozambique and provide early warning to the citizens there to not utilize the dam for potable uses. Some emerging work in the TFCAs is looking at the valuation from an ecosystem services point of view, what intact riparian corridors can do to ameliorate the impacts of both climatic and anthropogenic stresses. This is early work, but very encouraging. And we're hoping we'll see some further outputs of that work in due course. So as I move to wrap up, I just want to give a few highlights of the history of the cooperation. I think you've got an appreciation of the need for the river basins and the TFCAs to work together. And it actually started about 10 years ago. The RBOs and the TFCAs started to come together already. By 2017, the CASA TFCA and the Okavango River Commission had already started to work together. And just 2 weeks ago, CASA then signed a new MOU with the Zambezi Watercourse Commission along similar lines. And this is really important because it protects the power output and agricultural output of the region. So I was fortunate enough to be at the meeting where that MOU was signed. From LIMCOM, the Limpopo Watercourse Commission, we have a freshwater strategy together with the Great Limpopo Transfrontier Conservation Area. And there's emerging projects also, particularly funded through the Global Environment Facility, that are funding this joint cooperation. So in the Incomaputo Basin with the Lobombos, TFCA, also in the Rovuma Basin, which is a relatively undeveloped basin, also trying to develop joint programming with the Nyasa Sulu, TFCA, and also back in our region, the Limpopo, some cooperation emerging with the Greater Mountain Groupway TFCA. This is a highlight of, excuse me, of the ZAMCOM CASA MOU signing 2 weeks ago, and just some of the actions that are already taking place to facilitate that joint cooperation. They've now established a joint fisheries working group, which is there to protect the fisheries of quite a significant river basin asset within the protected area. Also trying to jointly fundraise and provide the impetus for climate adaptation within that river basin, and also for CASA. So zooming in back to the Limpopo area, this is our strategy for the Great Limpopo TFCA with LIMCOM. I won't go into too much of the detail, but it basically sets joint operations for environmental flows, setting river health baselines, focusing on water quality, improving the governance and the information exchange across the borders, both within the TFCA and the RBO space, and facilitating an open and transparent decision-making process. This is the MOU as it stands. It's currently going through signing as we speak, which is fantastic, and hopefully that will be signed off very soon, and then we can initiate these working groups in full speed. And then just to focus on one slide in the current project that I'm coordinating, it's funded by the Global Environment Facility by the United Nations Development Programme. And this is a Limpopo Basin-wide plan, what we call a strategic action plan that will be developed. Here we had the ministers of the 4 basins of the countries agreeing to embark on this process. So at the end, we will be able to have a basin-wide river management agreement, and inclusive in that, hopefully have the TFCAs involved. But coincidentally, we've already started to develop that cooperation. We've just done what's called a joint basin survey. This is the first one of its kind in the Limpopo. We brought the 4 countries of the Limpopo River Basin together with representatives from the Great Limpopo TFCA, and we did a full-scale assessment of the status, or the aquatic ecostatus of the entire river basin, focusing on water quality, the aquatic baseline from fish, macroinvertebrates, diatoms, and so forth, eDNA. And the idea is to build a transboundary river health team, focusing on environmental flow implementation, and then linking into the regional universities and so forth. So it went very well. I'm very encouraged by the cooperation. Hopefully we can continue this work, and also work with our neighboring TFCAs and RBOs to catalyze partnerships further. These are some of the visuals from the survey. These are pictures in the Kruger National Park, again on the Olifants River and the Lavuvu River on the right-hand side, probably the most pristine river in the entire Limpopo River Basin, and then also down at the estuary as the Limpopo River flows down into Mozambique. So just to summarize this talk, I think, well, hopefully you've got an appreciation through this very quick summary of the policy harmonization that's already underway within the SADC region, or the Southern African region. And now it's a case of putting those things into action, the implementation of these task teams that need to be established for joint management of TFCAs and river basins. The compelling reasons for that is not only about building resilience and the adaptation capacity to manage for climate change, but also to look at the beneficiation. And I think this is where the harmonization becomes key, so that we can look at joint ecotourism enterprises, for example, how ecotourism can facilitate river health monitoring and vice versa, as an example. But I think in the face of climate change, we really do need to be accelerating this cooperation, and again, seeking further resources and working with the political leadership to unlock further this cooperation, so that we can actually start to have joint action plans between the TFCAs and the river basin organizations. I'd like to then just close with this slide, and welcome to contact us at the Limpopo Watercourse Commission, and then reach out through the website and through our social media. And I'll be happy to take any questions during this platform or thereafter. So thanks very much, everybody. And back to you, Kevan. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Eddie. Yeah, great presentation, and thank you for bringing climate change adaptation, nature-based solutions to the fore there. Those are absolutely critical considerations. And the other perspective was that, you know, in my intro, I sort of presented transboundary conservation as an opportunity to deliver water catchment services. But within the context of the Great Limpopo, you're actually on the receiving end of catchment management. So your interest is to influence land use upstream so that the quality of the resource coming into the protected area is at least of a decent standard. So thanks for those perspectives, Eddie. All right, great. Let's move on to our next presentation, and that is from the Middle East, and Nadav Tal, who is a water officer at EcoPeace Middle East and has been since 2015. Nadav is a professional hydrologist, previously worked in the private sector as a consultant for Israel's Ministry of Environmental Protection in the field of soil contamination and groundwater remediation. In 2011, he completed his studies in groundwater remediation at Princeton University. Nadav is an environmental activist dedicated to nature conservation and environmental protection, integrating outdoor activities across the Middle East. He previously managed the Good Water Neighbors project alongside his role as a community coordinator, and led research with Oxford University on water use efficiency in the Jordan River Basin. Today, he is leading EcoPeace efforts on environmental conservation in the Dead Sea Basin and the protection of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Nadav, please take the floor and let's hear.
Thank you, Kevan. Thank you, Kevan. So my name is Nadav Tal. I'm a geologist from Israel, and I'm working in the last almost 10 years in EcoPeace Middle East. I'm going to talk about today our work in a region, as you all know, with a lot of conflict. And one of our uniqueness is that we bring together Israelis, Jordanian, and Palestinians working on the subject of environment. Stefania started with this sentence about working for nature is working for peace. So this is exactly defined EcoPeace, but we're also working for peace. That working for peace is also working for nature. So we're celebrating this month 30 years for our activities, and we're mainly focused on our shared water resources. So one of the things we lack in the Middle East is good water management. We're looking on the regional perspective. We try to, because water doesn't know any borders, and we have the transboundary water resources between all the countries in the region. And this is our model, actually. We all need drinking water for our well-being. We want water for nature. We want to know how to deal with water hazards like floods that are all related to the climate crisis that we all face now. And eventually how we can all manage it in the good economical level. And in order to achieve this good water management, we have good transboundary relations. And when we live in an area under conflict, this is become very, very complicated. And this is what also brings us together. So our basic approach is working from top down, from government level, but also from bottom up, from the community level, and bring also the international community. All the three aspects eventually brings to good water management and building what we call environmental peace building. Okay, you're building together, working for the nature, working for the peace. So a top-down approach focusing mainly on academia, advocacy, and also involving media. About a few years ago, we initiated the Green Blue Deal, which stand on 4 main pillars. We're not touching all the pillars, but it's mainly working together on our water resources through rehabilitation of the Jordan River, supplying water to all the people of the region who suffer from water scarcity. We want each human being will have enough water, and of course, bringing more water to nature. That's mainly focused on the Dead Sea and the Jordan River. For about 20 years, we used to work in communities. One of our special projects was calling Good Water Neighbors. You can see here in the map different water resources, mainly streams that crossing the border. For example, you can see the Hebron stream, we're crossing the West Bank to Israel and then to Gaza, which crossing the border twice. And we have Israelis and Palestinian communities who lives along the river cooperating on rehabilitating the river. If it's polluted, water resources, we bring the communities together. And while bringing communities together, we want to improve their environmental situation in the stream or the river. We started in 11 communities in 2001, and at the end, we ended up with 26 communities, Israelis, Palestinians, Israelis, Jordanians, working together. And you know, on these bad days that we face now, that was an amazing project that also by promoting nature conservation and environmental cooperation, and also brings ignorance. You know, ignorance is our worst enemy, and when we take the ignorance and bringing to the people to get to know each other, good things happens. One of our major projects, when our major focus is Jordan. Jordan suffers from water scarcity for many, many years, and this is a chart from Jordan's water master plan, which shows that they're gonna have a deficit in the water demand, even after they invent more water, artificial water resources, which eventually didn't happen. So in about 2 years ago, we initiated the water and energy nexus between Israel and Jordan, that we want also in the future to involve the Palestinians in it. The basic idea is to have desalination water in Israel, deliver it to Jordan, and in Jordan, in return, deliver renewable energy. So it's a win-win, and we create healthy interdependencies between the countries of the region. It built also water security, you know, manufacture clean energy, and eventually build political stability. Okay, this is basic things. So we started this project in 2015, and in 2022, the Israeli government signed this agreement with Jordan in UAE. That was an amazing achievement for us, you know, and also an opportunity to rehabilitate the Jordan River, and I will focus on it in a bit. Here you see the Minister of Energy of Israel and the Minister of Water in Jordan signing this agreement. This is our director, Gideon, with the Israeli Minister of Energy, and John Kerry, the US envoy for climate issues. Actually, we were the only NGOs that was invited to the ceremony because we were behind this agreement. So eventually, this water energy projects has to, like, how we can bring more water to Jordan through desalination plant on the Mediterranean. What you see here, the line is a national water carrier, bringing water from the Sea of Galilee in the north to the south, but we have now a reverse line, go from south to north, bring desalination water from Israel, but we want now, in the day after this war will finish, we want Gaza to have desalination plant as well to supply water to Gaza and be part of this project. Eventually, water will be lead to the Sea of Galilee. The Jordanian, from now on, will take the water from the Sea of Galilee to Jordan, to the King Abdallah Canal. You can see here on the red line. But in few years, we want this project to be an incentive to rehabilitate the Jordan River, which is polluted. And this is like a great opportunity to deliver more fresh water in the river for the Jordanian to pump it downstream for consumption in the capital Amman, which is most needed. So here we took an agreement, political agreement between Israel and Jordan, and we want to include Palestine and to take the opportunity to rehabilitate natural water resources.
5 minutes, Nadav. Sorry, Nadav, 5 minutes.
5 minutes. We take
Yes.
ministers for tours to see the river and to influence the decision. We worked in Gaza to clean the beaches. They suffered a lot from pollution from wastewater treatment plants. Eventually, we became a lot of obstacle, and eventually we managed to clean the beaches in Gaza as well. Unfortunately, today's situation is bad, but we hope that in the future we'll be able to rebuild all the wastewater treatment plant. We have cross-border pollution that's coming from the West Bank to Israel that we still need to work on. Water-related issues in Gaza mainly, but also in the West Bank, to promote cooperation between Israel Water Authority and the Palestinian Water Authority, that each person from the river to the sea will have enough water for consumption. We also work with climate tech and agri-tech in order to, we know that nature is not everything. We want to promote cooperation between different agri-tech, which is Israel is really good at. All kind of Israeli high-tech companies that deal with agriculture. It's cooperation between EcoPeace, Startup Nation, and the Israeli Democracy Institute that wants to promote cooperation between this company and Palestinians and Jordanians, mainly in the Jordan Valley. So it's not only rehabilitation of a river, but also rehabilitation of the environmental issues there, focusing on agriculture. So I started to speak about water security. So we also were involved with research, economical research about water management. We call it MIWAS, which is a multi-year water allocation system model, which in this model, we introduce several parameters, and the output of the model is bring us to a better water management system, especially on the regional level. Okay, so when we introduce parameters from Israel, Palestine, and Jordan, we want an output of where is the best price or how the most efficient way to deliver water to a certain zone. Eventually, we ended up in the Security Council of the United Nations to speak about Israeli and Palestinian peace and cooperation, and not only war, which was something very, very unique. This is like about 2 years ago. So at the end, the bottom-up approach, it's mainly on the educational level. We bring youth from Palestine, Israel, and Jordan together, speaking about water, speaking about what's important for us in life. And this is the Dead Sea. This picture was taken in the Dead Sea between Israelis, Palestinian, and Jordanian youth who lived around the Dead Sea. And they were calling, "Don't take our heart," because of the overuse of water. And actually the Dead Sea, which is a very unique place, like in the world scale, is declining more than 1 meter per year, and it's almost disappearing. And we need to do something. It's all disappearing because of water diversion. And this is a call from the people of the region, you know, for our government and for everybody, you know, for each person to take an action to save the Dead Sea. We working with young professionals, with different ministers. He is the Israeli Minister of the Environment, talking about these issues. We have a special project at the Red Sea, which is being shared between Israel, Egypt, and Jordan. You know, this is mainly between the cities of Eilat and Aqaba, Israeli and Jordanian cities, and people from Eilat and Aqaba working together in order to save the biodiversity and the unique marine life of the Red Sea. This is also a very, very nice project that we do, even under these days in the time of war. And I will finish with this optimistic picture. The Israeli and Palestinian crew from one side of the Jordan River and our Jordanian crew from the other side talking to each other during COVID. We were meeting now from time to time, but during COVID, we couldn't meet. So we met at the bank of the Jordan River. We actually talked to each other because the river is so small. And the mighty Jordan River that we know from the Bible is not mighty anymore because it's a water diversion. And this is one of EcoPeace's major project in order to see how we can rehabilitate the river, bring more fresh water, more maybe treated wastewater, you know, and to bring the people of the region together in order to make the river healthy again.
Henk, thank you. Sorry, not Henk, Nadav, thank you so much for that presentation. Incredibly interesting. I was very blessed to be able to visit your region some years ago and to work with Kevan and colleagues in that area, and very, very inspired. And your point around ignorance and informing people, and you know, we tend to think about people on the ground who are ignorant, but I think to a large extent it's our decision makers who we need to be convincing, and we need to equip ourselves to package the message that we carry across, so that it's not always a biodiversity threatened species type message, but it's what those speak to in terms of the catchment's capacity to deliver water, and the value of investing, that the return on investment can be significantly in favor of people and those decision makers. Thank you very much again, Nadav. So we go from 30 years or so of experience in the Middle East to an initiative which is in concept at the moment. So Henk, if you can please get yourself ready to present. Henk is no stranger to this work, as you'll see in his short bio, but the initiative that he's going to be speaking about on the Latorica River is very new. So Henk is part of a project funded by the Endangered Landscapes and Seascapes Program, aiming to initiate transboundary collaboration on the Latorica River, shared between Ukraine and Slovakia. Henk was project manager for several projects in the field of nature protection and integrated water resources management across Europe. Among others, he led a project that brought the former Yugoslav countries together to establish the Sava River Basin Commission and to develop an ecological network along the Sava River. He contributed to fostering collaboration between Spain and Portugal on their shared rivers and managed a project that resulted in the designation of a transboundary Ramsar site along the Estonia-Latvia border. He is currently self-employed and works for Wetlands International Europe and Eurosite. Henk, thank you so much for making yourself available. Please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Kevan, and thank you also, Nadav and Eddie, for very interesting presentations about your projects. Well, as Kevan said, yeah, we just started, so I haven't can't show you a lot of experiences from the project we just started, which is about reconnecting the Latorica floodplain landscape in a transboundary context. So I will give, of course, a short introduction of where we are and how we started the project, about what are the main topics of the projects, our partners, and the challenges and opportunities we meet and met while implementing the project so far. So this is the location of the project area. We are in the center of Europe, on the border between Slovakia and Ukraine. And here we have Poland, Hungary, and Romania. So really in Central Europe. And we are in the catchment of the Tisa River, which you see the boundaries here. And this is the Tisa River here. And in this, here we have the project area again. Here is the Latorica, and you can see that a lot of rivers are coming together in this central part, all springing in the Carpathian Mountains, which are here. And they all come together, flow together into the Tisa, and the Tisa is finally going down south and ending up in the Danube River. Well, this area here in the center has always been a low-lying, marshy, wetland area. And for a long time, as you can see, this is the Latorica in the 18th century. Very strongly meandering, which shows already that the area is rather flat, and it's one big marshland, riverine forests, and down south from the area you have more elevated lands, where also some little villages are located. And also along the northern border you have some more elevated areas, which at this point were more or less in agriculture use, but also forests and so on. So in the 19th century, still there was not much work done on straightening the Latorica. It's still in its natural flow here. Also the Tisa and the other rivers, there's not much agriculture still. And it's very, it's not densely populated, just few villages here. But things changed significantly in the early 20th century, especially in the 1950s and the 1960s. During communist times, when large melioration activities started. Here again are the villages I showed before. Dikes on both sides of the Latorica were built, and the Latorica was straightened. You can still see here the old meanders, but the river is very tightened up in a small floodplain, and the area around, especially south of the Latorica, is highly intensely drained through canals and ditches and pumping stations. Not so much though at the northern side, which is more or less still in a semi-natural situation. And here you see the drainage system with a canal running parallel to the Latorica, and then various places, pumping stations are pumping the water into the Latorica. And here on the right side, you have the border with Ukraine. And here is the Ukrainian side, where more or less the same thing happens. Although the Latorica, especially towards the border with Slovakia, is still meandering very strongly, but more upstream, the Latorica is also straightened and canalized. And also the dikes are very close to the river, which results in very fluctuating water levels within the dikes. So the border between Slovakia and Ukraine has been always, until the 1998, 1990, very closed. I'll come back on that later. Despite the melioration works and the canalization, quite a big area of the Latorica has been designated as protected area. It has different designation levels. So part is more dark part is a landscape park in Slovakia. Then a bigger part is designated as an Ramsar site on the Slovakian side. It is also designated under European nature legislation, the Habitats Directive. That is also this central part. And this more light blue area is designated under the so-called Birds Directive, meaning that it is an important area for birds, and the reasons for having it designated under the Birds Directive. Again, you see the border between Slovakia and the Ukraine, and on the Ukrainian side, the area between the dikes is designated as a landscape park, which is a very low level of protection. There's no management authority and basically also no management. It is just protection on paper. So how did we start this project? It was basically the initiative of the State Nature Conservancy of Slovakia that asked Wetlands International whether Wetlands International could help to improve the management of the protected area on the Slovakian side, to also help to address climate change impacts and despite the designation, the downgoing trend of biodiversity values in the protected area. I think that request came to us in early 2022. Looking at the map, we found out that there is this protected area also at the Ukrainian side. So we decided to not only look at the issues on the Slovakian side, but also look at how we can bring these two protected areas together in one project. And this resulted in a field visit in November 2022, when with a delegation of State Nature Conservancy of Slovakia, the Water Management Enterprise of Slovakia, BirdLife of Slovakia, and also representative of the Oblast, the Sarkapasia Oblast in Uzhhorod in Ukraine, NGOs in Ukraine, as the Danube Carpathian program. We visited both sides of the border to get an impression of the area and to see what the issues were that were at stake and how we could develop a kind of a joint project proposal, which by the end of 2022 we did and submitted to the Endangered Landscapes and Seascapes program. This is the project area, so it includes basically all the protected areas in Slovakia. Here's the border again, and also we looked outside of the designated landscape park in Ukraine, but looked at a wider area in Ukraine, this proposal to look at how we could restore the landscape and the river and address climate change impacts in this whole area was approved by the Landscape and Seascapes program, and we got some funding to start the project in by the end of exactly 1 year ago. Exactly 1 year ago, we started to work on the project, and the overall output of the project is a landscape restoration vision and a framework landscape restoration program. So we envisage not to come up with a plan that at once will kind of restore the original landscape or bring back river dynamics in a wide area. That is clear to us that is impossible. But how it will look like by the end, we have 2 years for this project, by the way. So by the end of next year, November 2025, we need to come up with a proposal. Luckily, we have quite some partners in our project, including the water management company. I have to admit, however, that the water management enterprise in Slovakia still officially did not become a partner yet. They're still considering. There is some reluctance to become a partner in the project. We do not really know where this comes from. But also the Slovak Hydrometeorological Institute is a partner. Also in Ukraine, we have the Water Management Authority of the Latorica as a partner. And we have supporting partners like the Subcarpathian Oblast, Ministry of Environment, and also the Water Research Institute in Slovakia. So what are the topics?
3 minutes, Henk. Just 3 minutes.
Right. What are the topics? Well, we look, of course, at the impact of climate change and how we can improve flood retention. We will look at how we can agriculture become more nature friendly. That means also that we need to adjust water management. There's serious droughts in the area. There's this intensive drainage system is also can be attributed to these droughts. We will look at the possibility of rewilding, especially in the northern part where there are some river dunes, tourism development. An important topic is also remeandering of the Latorica. The old meanders are still visible in the landscape. We do stakeholder mapping, currently ongoing. We hope not by the end of this project period, but by the end of the next period to designate a transport Ramsar site. And of course, one of the main topics is to establish transboundary cooperation. You have to know, as I said already, the border between Ukraine as being part of the former Soviet Union and Slovakia, part of the Warsaw Pact, but not of the Soviet Union, has been very close. So there was hardly any exchange of information between Ukraine and Slovakia on nature conservation issues. So we are collecting all this information and we'll end that this spring with a visioning workshop where we will invite all partners to discuss what will be the future of this project, how can we restore the system, and also develop the economic situation, bring a future for agriculture, but also look at tourism opportunities. Well, as I said, there are some challenges. Until now, the reluctance of the Slovak water management enterprise to become involved in our project. That's really something that is worrying me, as we need them in our project and we need them to be part of the discussion. Change political constellation, especially in Slovakia, where there have been elections earlier this year, and that brought with it change in management of various governmental agencies, so replacement of managers and so on, which also brought about change in context and delays. There is a huge language barrier. We hadn't been considered that sufficiently between Ukraine and Slovakia. In Ukraine, English is not or hardly spoken. So that is also making coordination difficult. The ownership situation in Slovakia after redistribution of the lands after the communist system fell down is very complicated. Hundreds of owners, sometimes of just a small part of the area. And of course, the war in Ukraine is also having a big impact. But I have to say the Ukrainian officials are still very engaged and committed to the project. So that's very good. The opportunities are that there is a big budget allocated to the Latorica from the European Recovery and Resilience Funds, which will hopefully be used for restoration activities along the Latorica. The adoption of the EU Nature Restoration Law, which means that each country within the European Union has to come up with nature restoration plans by the end of 2026. And of course, we hope to bring in our ideas in this national nature restoration proposal of Slovakia. And we are very happy with the continued support of the Ministries of Environment, both in Ukraine and Slovakia. So thank you for listening. And in case you have questions, yes, please let me know. You can contact me via the email presented here. Thank you very much.
Henk, thank you very much for that. It's a massive endeavor that you're undertaking there. When we first began to engage, and I had a look at the system, and apologies for my pronunciation. I got it wrong. Latorica, I picked that up now. But yes, when I first looked at the system on Google Earth, it's an incredibly hard-working system, highly modified. But I think returns on investment would be obvious. So yeah, I want to encourage you to hang in there. But you do have a question, Henk, from Thomas. How are you going to deal with complex ownership situation in Slovakia? I assume there is several public owners, managers, and many scattered private owners. Do they all have to agree to all the project restoration activities? Or is there another option being considered? Quite a loaded question there. Henk, did you get that? Are you able to respond to Thomas?
No, yes, it's very well understood. And as I indicated, that is one of the main challenges we are facing, and we haven't a clear answer yet. We have luckily, as I already said, the BirdLife partner in our project, and the Slovakian BirdLife partner has already some experiences with how to deal with this complex ownership situation. They are managing some areas. They managed to purchase some areas also despite this complex situation. But no, the answer can be very short. We haven't a clear solution for that, and that's one of the things we need to work on. That will also cause, of course, delays in the final implementation. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Henk. Yeah, and I guess it comes down to being able to demonstrate proof of concept. Huge challenge to be able to get everyone on board from the start, work with those who are willing to work with you, and provide that proof of concept. Just keep at it. I don't know if Eddie or Nadav have anything to contribute to that, because I believe that question is relevant to any international basin, river basin situation, and those complexities will be there. Eddie or Nadav, any thoughts from your side?
Kevan, yeah, so from my side, I mean, in the Southern African context, of course, the mix between different types of landowners is very pervasive. We're dealing with a situation of what we call decolonization. And in terms of both the land policy and the water policy, they're somewhat divergent in terms of sort of land allocation and water allocation. And I think in the context of where river basins and transboundary conservations can work together is perhaps to mobilize a discussion where both the land ownership and the water allocation process need to converge as well. which they don't necessarily do at a national level. I think once that conversation becomes mainstream, it will unlock a lot more opportunity. Thanks.
No, thanks for that, Eddie. And I think that comes back to what I said in the beginning, that disconnect between the water resource planners and managers and the conservation, what happens in the terrestrial environment. Very, very much so. Yes. Okay. And Nadav, from your perspective?
So, for our perspective, in Israel, for example, there's no such thing private-owned water. All the water is owned by the government or the water authority. So there's no such thing. There is, when it comes to cross-border water resources like the aquifer or the Jordan River, we have two different aspects. One with the Israeli and Jordanian relations and the Israeli-Palestinian relationship. With Israeli-Jordanian issue, we have a peace treaty. And in this peace treaty, there's a major chapter on water, which really into the detail brings the different water allocation between countries. So it's really clear who deserves what and who is getting what, and it's being updated. You know, Israel agreed to double the water to Jordan and even triple it in the future, while with the Palestinian is completely the opposite. You know, there is no peace, and because of that, the water issue is in conflict and disputed, and we still left with the Oslo Accord that was signed in the 90s, which is really not updated, and there's still a way long to go there. And this is what we're also working on for the future, to have a new water agreement between Israel and Palestine, so everybody will get the fair share, and the water allocation will be as good as it gets for the regional water management.
Thanks, Nadav, for that perspective. And I don't think it's unique in terms of, if I can say the word, ownership of the water resource. I think in most instances, it is seen as a national asset, which is managed by a national department or government entity. But it's the issue of land ownership, and that comes back to Thomas's question: is you know, if we embrace that reality that what happens on land determines what happens in the watercourse, and we really need to come to grips with that land ownership and the complexities around land ownership, and how do we manage and influence the way in which that land is managed so as to enhance its capacity to deliver good quality and a sustainable source of water into the watercourse. So land management is absolutely crucial for water management. We can't do one without the other. I see that the chat is pretty quiet. I don't know if Steph or Valentina, from your side, if you've got anything to ask, or
Yes, I just put a question in the chat, but I can profit.
Please.
Open the microphone. Oh, thank you very much. There were very, very interesting presentations. And just a little comment about the last case. As we know, but we maybe not everyone knows that Ukraine is now in the process to asking to enter the European Union. In that case, the borders with Slovakia will be lighter in some way, because inside the European Union we have some possibilities to collaboration among member states that could help indeed. But we will see what will happen. And I have a lot of questions, but one little, that is not little, thing is about languages. Henk already mentioned. How do you do about that, Nadav and Eddie, in your areas? Eddie, maybe English is the common language. I don't know. I'm curious. Thank you.
Thanks, Stefania. So in the Limpopo River Basin case, and it's the same for the TFCA, three of the four countries are Anglophone speaking, so English speaking, and one is Lusophone, so Portuguese. So at a transboundary context, when the countries get together, it's often run in a dual medium. So you'll have when it's a sort of negotiation process, you'll have simultaneous translation as standard. But once you get onto the ground and you're implementing projects at community level, of course, you then have to build in local community languages and translation services for the stakeholder engagement. So it's a sort of multi-language approach. It just depends on the level of interaction the one is engaging on. Thanks.
Nadav, would you like to?
For us, we speak English, unfortunately. I would rather to speak Arabic with my colleagues, but we speak English. And if somebody doesn't speak English, we just use translator.
That's interesting. Okay. Thanks very much for that, Nadav. There's a question for you as well, Nadav, so don't go away. And that's from Nella from Europark Federation. What are the most important steps towards maintaining cooperation during challenging times? That sounds like a challenging
question. This is a question we ask ourselves after October 7th. What can we do? So my first step is just breathing, and just think that everything will go away and better times are ahead of us. So this is the first thing we need to acknowledge. The second is to think for the day after and the future, and the fact that we don't have any other choice. Okay, it's like no one's going anywhere, and we have to, as Stefania mentioned at first, we have to work for nature. Working for nature is working for peace. So this is my torch.
No, thanks, Nadav. I think that was a great answer.
Yeah,
yeah, just keep our eyes focused on that end goal. Know that it really is what counts. And I think Nella, your question is absolutely appropriate given the circumstances in the Middle East at the moment. But at the same time, it remains a challenge for international water basin management, anywhere in the world, even in peace times. The more countries that you have involved, and in our situation here in Southern Africa, Eddie's mentioned Kaza, the Kavango-Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area, a number of times. That's 5 countries involved in that initiative. If we take the river basin as a whole, it's more than 5 countries. So maintaining cooperation with those 5 countries, even during times of peace, is a challenge. And I think as transboundary conservation practitioners, we need to keep that in mind, that we've got to maintain the profile of our initiatives. We've got to we can't afford to find ourselves on the back foot. Decision makers change, politicians change, and although we might have memorandums of understanding or memorandums of agreement that were signed maybe 10 years ago, those things need to be revised. They need to be brought onto the table of the new decision makers, the new politicians. So transboundary conservation, multi-country water basin management are challenging, whether it's in peacetime or in times of conflict. And we just need to simply embrace that fact and continue to keep the broader vision in mind and continue to work forward on that. Another question, Irena, I hope I pronounced that correctly, from European Wilderness. It's a comment. Transcarpathian mentioned Ukraine area as a long-term transboundary collaboration with many neighboring EU countries. English is a commonly used language, but Slovaks and Ukrainians can understand each other well. Thanks for initiating the project in the area. Good luck with its implementation. Irena, thank you very much for that comment. You're most welcome to unmute yourself if you wanted to elaborate on that, if I haven't represented you clearly.
Yeah, just to use this chance, again, would like to thank you for invitation to join this meeting, as I'm coming from this area, from Ukraine, and now I'm working on big wetland horizon project called Alpha Wetlands, and the world is small, so unfortunately there is no Ukrainian side, but we definitely will transfer this knowledge also from our project, and we keep in contact with colleagues, and that's great that partners from Wetland International, who are also partners in our project, they have involved local NGOs who have a very good international cooperation from Uzhhorod and from Lviv, and I think they should support you with language barriers, especially in English, overcoming. So, and good luck to everyone, because it's really important to enhance transboundary collaboration. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Irena. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
It's fine, Irena.
And pleased to meet you, Irena. Hopefully we can connect after this meeting and see how we can join forces.
Perfect. Looking forward. Thank you.
That's excellent. You know, if we take nothing else away from this webinar this afternoon, for me, this is what it's all about: is making those connections and the networking. As long as we can also bring our water resource planners on board and make them to connect with the understanding that transboundary conservation can contribute significantly to their management of the water resource. I see no further comments or questions in the chat. Stefania, Valentina, anything from your side?
No, I will just say sorry, Valentina, please.
Perhaps I had a question for Henk, because I remember that discussing about this presentation before the webinar, he said that probably Hungary will also be on board. So were they already included in discussion, or are they actually going to be part of the project, or is there some reluctance from their side? How is it going?
Yeah, thank you, Valentina. Yeah, as you have seen in the map, all these and also the Latorica and the other rivers are part of the TISA catchment, and there's a TISA committee also. I've tried to connect, or I'm working on to connect with WWF Hungary, because I know they're working on the TISA and also on flood issues along the TISA. So at this moment, in this part of the project, we will stick to Ukraine and Slovakia, but working on a transboundary Ramsar site and expanding the existing Ramsar sites, we definitely will need also to look at Hungary and also having in mind that the flood issues are more downstream along the TISA in Hungary. We need to be able to look at how we can involve also the Ukrainian and get also in contact. We already tried that, but didn't manage yet, with the TISA committee to see how we can coordinate our activities with those implemented in the frame of the TISA committee.
Thanks, Henk. Yeah, well done, Valentina, for loading Henk's plate there. Already he has a big project on his hand, but my thoughts as well. It's yeah, they're more than just the two countries involved. So thanks for that. Yeah, all the very best to that endeavor. We've had to say goodbye to Nadav. We see a comment in the Q&A there that he has to leave us. Nadav, are you gone already, or are you still with us? You could just say goodbye if you are still with us. But
I think he left.
he's already left. All right. Well, in his absence, huge thank you to Nadav. We'll certainly follow it up to say thank you again. Steph, I think, sorry, there's something else that's come through from Sila Rodman. If I can help with Hungarian contacts, please let me know. I am from a Hungarian national park. What a pleasure. That's fantastic. Thank you very much for that. And Henk, I assume you've taken note of that. So that's great. And another one, I am Ana Becar from TNC Argentina, starting to work on transboundary cooperation with Chile and Patagonia, just in case,
just in case any of you is from the geographical typography.
Thank you. Thanks for that interpretation. Well done, Valentina. No, that's excellent. So the networking is exploding here, and that's a fantastic output from this webinar. So really appreciate everybody for using this opportunity to reach out and make these contacts. So Anna, if you're still on the call, yes, please do link in with the Transboundary Conservation Specialist Group. Reach out to Stefania for membership if you are not already a member of the Transboundary Conservation Specialist Group. It's a global networking platform through the IUCN's Commission on Protected Areas. So there, Steph has shared her email address in the Q&A. So please reach out to her as far as membership is concerned. Membership of the specialist group does require you also to be a member of the Commission, the IUCN Commission on Protected Areas, WCPA. So please also apply for membership to that commission. It's a formality. It's highly unlikely that your application for membership will be turned down. And there are huge benefits to be involved in both the IUCN's network as well as this specialist group network. So thanks very much, Anna, for acknowledging that. Steph, from your side, perhaps as co-chair, we fast approaching 4:30 on South African time here, so fast 2 more minutes left before we close the webinar. So Steph, can I hand over to you perhaps?
Great, thank you very much. Thank you to all participants. As always, some registered but could not come. They will receive the record. Other people needed to leave in advance, but doesn't matter. What is really important for us is to give this possibility to our members and people that are not yet maybe a member of the group. I would like to thank Kevan really for this webinar. He managed everything, selecting the speakers, selecting the case studies. So really, thank you very much, Kevan. Was very important, interesting. And as we saw, as we know also for other situations in Europe, in everywhere, transboundary cooperation and political situations are very, very connected. And it's our part of the work. Our work is to be part of these processes, to try to push politics in a good, peaceful way. And this is what really we hope for all our countries, our people, our planet. So I see that some people are sharing also still some links. Thank you very much. Please don't be shy. Write to me, write to Valentina. We will keep you in touch. We will keep in touch. And we will send you more information about next initiatives. Maybe we are exploring the possibility to organize the next webinar inside the IUCN Engage system. We will see if it's open enough also for people that are not inside the IUCN family, but we will see next year new developments of this programs. And if you have any ideas about the new topics that you would like to discuss together, please send us your ideas. So thank you very much. Valentina, thank you to you for your great support. She's the future, the present and the future of our group. And thank you very much to everyone for being with us. Bye-bye. Ciao.
Thank you.
Steph.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.